can't believe it's already our third episode. Welcome to our third episode of our new webinar series, Music and Healing. I'm Carleen Graham. I'm the director of HGOco, Houston Grand Opera's Community and Learning Initiative. And I'm joined by Patrick Summers, who is the artistic and music director. Hello, Patrick.
Hi, Carleen, and welcome to all of our guests. Happy New Year. Carleen and I are so delighted to welcome you to this ongoing series, which is exploring how music and singing are being used in a variety of ways to help heal the mind, body, and spirit.
And this is part of our larger Seeking the Human Spirit initiative, which is a 6-year initiative. And so again, another one of our many programs falling under that purview. I'd like to introduce our ASL interpreter, Jessica Press from Nightingale Interpretive Services. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica. This episode will cover some of the clinical and artistic work which explores the connection of music and singing and its uses in memory care. We have a lot to cover today, so I want to get right to the program. I want to welcome our first guest, magnificent singer, the founder of a program called Songs by Heart, my dear colleague, Nancy Gustafson. Welcome, Nancy. Nancy and I were realizing today that we've had an unusually long relationship professionally for the arts. I've known Nancy for probably between 35 and 36 years. And I first met her through her mother, Sue, who ran the Merrill Opera auditions. Nancy and I both got our start at the San Francisco Opera in the 80s, just about at the same time. Nancy, it's so wonderful to see you. Thank you for being here.
So I should just talk about this wonderful mom that I had that Patrick knew. My mother suffered from Alzheimer's late in life. She probably started it when she was about, the best that we can gather is probably 80 years old. She might have started it sooner. They were keeping it hidden from us as long as my dad was alive. They were not letting us know that mom was having problems.
Really?
When my dad died, her dementia took a hit. She lived at home for 4 years with a full-time caregiver until the caregiver realized that she couldn't do it on her own because mom's wandering was too great. You couldn't keep mom inside. She'd get off the elevator and she'd walk into a different apartment and sit down and have dinner with different families all the time. And the caregiver was always looking for her. So she moved into a memory care unit. At the time when she moved in, she was still a little verbal. She certainly didn't know who people were, but she used to say that, her mind was like a sieve. Whatever went in it, went out it again. And she used to laugh about her dementia. Then after moving into this memory care unit, her dementia, her Alzheimer's took another hit. And quickly she started going downhill. And she stopped walking. She stopped talking. And my sister had moved her to a memory care unit in California, which was near to where my sister lived. And I was teaching at Northwestern and living all over the place. So my sister said, would you please come out to California and see her? Mom's not talking anymore. We couldn't get her to say more than 2 words. My sister said, if you can get her to say something other than yes or no and put 2 words in a sentence, you've hit a home run. So the first time I went in to see her, it was just devastating to me. I saw my mom sitting with her head down in a wheelchair, unable to communicate at all. Mm-hmm. She clearly didn't know who I was. So I'd say, Mom, are you okay? And she'd just kind of nod her head. Or she was always very polite throughout all of dementia. She was very polite, but we never knew if she knew what she was answering. You'd say, do you want something to eat? And she'd go, no. Mm. So after visiting her, I couldn't even spend an hour in the room with her because I just wanted to burst into tears. My sister said, take pictures of the past of the family and see if that will, get anything going in her brain. Nothing would go. Sure. So one day I thought, I'm going to see singing. Somebody told me singing would work. So in the living room of the memory care unit, I pulled her wheelchair over the piano. I brought the Episcopal hymnal because Mom had been very active in the Episcopal Church. I thought for sure something in her memory is going to remember this. So I have to preface this by saying that my mother made us all study piano when we were little, and I studied piano for 12 years. And I have to preface this story by saying that 12 years of all the piano lessons in the world are not going to make you a pianist if you have no talent, because I am still terrible at the piano.
No, you're not.
I am. So I start playing. Here is my mother who couldn't say 2 words, right? Mm-hmm. I start playing some Christmas hymns, and she starts singing immediately.
Really?
Immediately. And I keep singing, and I keep playing, and I look over, catch her out of the corner of my eye, and I see her singing, and all of a sudden, after 15 minutes, I stop, and my mother, who had said nothing for months, said, "You know, that's not very good." At which point I started laughing, because I'm presuming she was talking about my piano playing. To this day, I choose to think that she was talking about my piano playing rather than my singing, but it might have been both. But that's exactly what my mom would have said.
Yes,
so
it is.
I said, okay, we're going to choose easier pieces. I'm going to be careful. I said, okay, Mom, only the key of C or the key of F or the key of G. So I flipped through the hymnal looking for easier things to play, and we continue singing. For 20 minutes, we continue singing.
Wow.
And after 20 minutes, I turned to look at my mom, and she says, "That's much better."
My God.
And I mean, I get goosebumps every time I tell this. Look at the hair standing straight up on my. I wanted to run out of there and say, "Mom, that's movie, Alive Inside." My mom was alive inside. Mm-hmm. And so I said, "Mom, Mom, it's only October. If we keep practicing for 2 months, we could go out to the shopping mall in December, put out a cup, and earn some money." My mom laughed, and she said, "The Gustafson family singers."
Wow.
Right. This is, to this day, I mean, I was, not only did she crack a joke, but she knew her last name and my last name, and she knew that we were related. She had not known who we were, who I was, and she was cracking a joke back for me.
And that's very much something she would have said.
Exactly what she would have said.
Yeah, yeah.
A month later, I come back and visit her again. Again, she doesn't know who anybody is, doesn't know anything. And I brought Emily, who now is running Songs by Heart with me. She had taken care of Mom one day a week to give a break to the caregiver when she lived in Chicago. So I thought, she's going to recognize I have a disabled brother, as you know, Patrick, who has cerebral palsy, and for why I know sign language, because he's deaf. And I thought she'd have a guttural reaction. She was his caregiver for 30 years. I thought for sure she would know him. She knew no one. So we start singing again. We start singing, and everybody in the memory care unit starts singing along with us. For an hour and a half, we kept everybody singing until the memory care unit said, these people have got to eat. You got to stop this. So we take Mom out for lunch that day. Remember, this is a mom who didn't know anybody at the beginning. She sat with us at lunch. She looked at the pond at the shopping center, and she said, "Oh, this is so nice out here." All of a sudden, she had vocabulary.
Yeah. We
take her back after lunch. I say, "Mom, do you want to sit in the living room or in your bedroom?" She said, "Living room." Here she was responding with words. And I said, she took my face in her hands and said, "Thank you for a wonderful day," and kissed me. Wow. Patrick, I walked out of there saying, I got to do something. I got to figure out why she's not singing every day.
Yes. So, well, and also, I'm also remembering the extraordinary sound of your voice. My gosh, Nancy, to hear, to have your voice as her daughter also would be so meaningful. I wish, would you share some example of the work that you're doing with Songs by Heart? I think we lead sing-along programs in memory care units. When COVID started, we were in 54 locations, memory care units across the United States. Okay. And we did a research project at the beginning to prove that what happened with my mom would happen with other people. Mm-hmm. So sure enough, 12-week study in 3 different memory care communities around the Chicago area proved that it worked. This is a fast forward. I've got 3 favorite stories.
One, we had just started the research project, and within 2 weeks, we had the grandchildren of a woman who lived in one of these memory care units call us. She said, my grandmother used to be so aggressive. They had to move her out from living with the grandfather because she would hit people and she was always screaming and yelling at people. And the grandchildren didn't like to visit her because what could they do? You know, she was always angry. Now, when they went to visit her, she was singing, and she was singing the songs that she had sung with songs by heart, because we did this 5 days a week. So they said, we are heard you are privately funded. How do we give money? Because my grandmother has to sing every day. Well, now I'm telling you, 5.5 years later, this woman is still alive and well and kicking. She's got to be in her 90s somewhere, and she's had dementia for that long. The grandfather has since passed away. She is still singing. She's off her antipsychotic. She's no longer aggressive. As long as you have her singing, she's happy. And the grandchildren and the children are, of course, ecstatic. Another case was within, I think, 2 weeks, maybe a week, of us singing every day with these memory care patients, people. There was a man who hated to get up in the morning. Imagine waking up and not knowing who you were, where you are, and he'd wake up very angry and aggressive, and the caregiver would come in and try to get him dressed, and he never wanted to do anything. Well, coming out of one of the memory care sessions, one of the songs by heart sing-along sessions, this man, the caregiver, heard him humming Edelweiss that they had sung in the songs by heart session. And she started figuring out that as long as he heard Edelweiss, he was happy. So in the morning, the caregiver would go in humming, and the man would start singing. And as long as you got him singing, he then would get dressed, he'd go to breakfast, he'd go participate. And the last example, we went to San Diego to start our songs by heart in one of the memory care units there. And sadly, we were brand new to San Diego, and I didn't have a pianist, and I had to play. So as we can imagine how that went. So I was having to accompany, and at the end of the session, a woman comes over to me, and she just bursts into tears. And I hugged her. She said, I cannot thank you enough for what you did for my mom. And I said, what? She said, my mom has been here 3 months. She has not talked. She won't participate in any activity. She is just miserable all the time. And all of a sudden, she's singing. She sang every word with you guys, and she was smiling, and she was laughing. And she just burst into tears. And I said, now listen, I know exactly where you're coming from. My mom did the same thing. I said, watch. You go, when you visit her now, go over to the wheelchair. And the mother was sitting in the wheelchair. I said, what song does she like? God Bless America. Mm-hmm. So I went over and I started singing God Bless America with the woman. And she sang right back to me. And I said, so every time you go in to see your mom, start the session with a song.
Amazing. Amazing.
It's so easy. The number one favorite song is Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
Okay. Well,
here's the opera singer singing Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
Well, let's look at a video clip of some of your work, Nancy. We would love to see this.
Songs by Heart is a lot more interactive than some traditional forms of music therapy. So we try to use a lot more stimulation, so more dancing, clapping, movement along with the singing.
Just as long as we're together, it doesn't matter at all. Out at the old
Before sessions, you could have anything from, being totally asleep to being angry, and the music almost always has some kind of positive effect on people. Usually, too, people are talking a lot more after sessions, moving a lot more, energy tends to be higher. So lots of different goals we have for every person, but somehow the music seems to touch everybody.
In the days that he participates, I can tell that he has a sense of feeling content, and it's something that he can remember. I think it just makes everybody feel like they're home.
Wow. What extraordinary work, Nancy. And I want to go on to our next guest in a minute, but I also want to hear how the pandemic must have severely affected your ability to do this work. But we will come back to that. But thank you for sharing and for everything your team does, Nancy. That's amazing, just amazing.
It's all thanks to you, Patrick. People like you're training all the singers. We just go and hire the singers and the pianists.
Well, you hired a good one there. She was amazing.
Oh,
But
I said you have to have a beautiful voice.
It's fantastic work that you're doing. So to discuss some of the clinical background of memory disorders, I want to welcome Dr. Joseph Masdeu, the director of the Nantz National Alzheimer's Center at Houston Methodist. Welcome, Dr. Masdeu.
Hi, Patrick. Thank you very much, and to Carleen for inviting me to be with you this morning.
It's a pleasure. For our viewers, would you take a moment to explain the differences between the types of dementia, Alzheimer's, and other predominant memory challenges that you see in your practice?
Sure. It is a challenging field because people begin having difficulties with memory or speaking or whatnot. And there are many different diseases that can cause this problem. So, we group them under the term dementia, but dementia is just a general term. What one has to do as a doctor is to try to define whether the person has something that can be cured. So not just alleviated or slowed down, but cured. And I must tell you that not infrequently, people have diseases that can be cured. And that's one of the things that we do at the Nantz National Alzheimer Center, that is to separate these diseases that still don't have a cure, although we are working very laboriously in trying to get new treatments for them. But there are instances when somebody comes looking like somebody with Alzheimer's and fortunately has something that can be completely reversed. And it is a joy to see them coming back to life.
Wow.
Now, Alzheimer's is the most frequent of these diseases, but there are others like frontotemporal dementia, like vascular dementia, and other diseases. And they have different ways of dealing with them. So we like to get to the bottom of what the person has. We use now imaging of the brain to look not just at the symptoms, but what is going on in the brain itself, so that we don't give diagnosis just a little bit off the cuff, but based on very solid grounds.
Yeah. And what are some of the clinical practices at the National Alzheimer's Center?
So what we do is we see everyone. We have 4 neurologists who specialize in this kind of problems, and we interview the person. Typically, Nancy mentioned before how the person with these diseases many times is not aware of what's going on. So what we do is we see them, we examine them, we speak with them, but then while they are being tested for memory, I speak with the family about what's going on, so that they have the freedom and without embarrassing their relative, they can tell me things that sometimes are a little bit embarrassing about forgetting things and so on. So, and then oftentimes we use MRI or we use something that is called positron emission tomography to look at what's going on in the brain. What is causing the problems with memory? It is not enough to say, okay, this is likely Alzheimer's, so take this medication. You really need to get to the bottom of it, because it may not be. Alzheimer's is only about, depending on the age group, is about 60% of all the dementias. So there are many other things that are not Alzheimer's. And then we give them the treatments that are available, which are simply to improve memory a little bit, but also we put them in touch with social workers, with counselors, I mean, to deal with all the issues. And of course, music therapy is a wonderful thing. I mean, I'll speak a little bit more about it if you want.
Yes.
But the other thing is that we have a number of what are called treatment trials. That is potentially new medications that could slow down the disease. And we invite them to be enrolled in the appropriate ones if they want. Many families and patients find this extremely helpful because they are doing something concrete about their disease. They are not just
Sure.
waiting for things to worsen. And this is one of the aspects that we can have at the National Alzheimer Center being a specialized center. So we are working with a number of companies, or we have our own studies funded by the National Institutes of Health, where we are trying medications that have proven to be very helpful in animal models or in small groups of patients, and giving them to people who are interested in this kind of approach.
Wonderful. I think I do certainly want to hear some more about the role of music, but I think we have an introductory video of your work at Methodist. Would you like to say anything about this?
Oh, sure. Oh, that's fine. I mean, I think the video is relatively self-explanatory.
Right.
I mean, it gives a little bit of an overview of what things look like for all the people in the team.
Wonderful. Thank you. Let's see that. So fascinating.
All right. So a quick overview.
Thank you.
But one thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Patrick.
No, please, Doctor.
So one thing that I was reminded by the video, and that is very, very important, is that we review everything with the person who comes to see us, with the patient. So we don't just put them aside and speak with the family. As you saw in my meeting with the family, the patient is there, the person. I mean, I don't like to call them patients. I like to call them by their names. And we review, for instance, the images of their brains with them. And we explain to them what it is in those images. And this is extremely helpful because, it makes them understand why they are having these problems, and that what they are having is not something that they are imagining, or that they are, it's something that is there and that we are working to correct. So that is extremely helpful. And cool. You probably saw the change with the families and patients is very, very fluid. Now the follow-up, the therapy that including music therapy is the most important thing, to be available for them with any questions about medications, whatnot, and to make them realize that these are years that they are still it can be wonderful years if they understand the disease and they work. They basically supply to what the patient needs in a way that is very natural. And Nancy just gave us so many wonderful examples of dealing with her mom. I mean, that's exactly what we encourage the families to do.
Well, and of course, with memory and dementia issues, the patient, him or herself, has a very different emotional set of issues than the family does, and you as the caregiver, as the doctor, have to deal with a complex matrix of emotional reactions to this. I mean, I want to try to link what Nancy was talking about with your work. Why do you think music, and especially singing, plays such an important role in memory care? What's the connection?
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right in that the patient's world is a different world. And one of the things that one realizes is that many patients are not very aware of what they are going through. I mean, which is in a way wonderful. It's a wonderful defense mechanism. But then they can isolate themselves and become depressed, and that is like anyone else can become depressed. It's a major issue with Alzheimer's.
Sure.
And for quite a few years, we have known that music is wonderful to treat brain problems, particularly those that affect the left side of the brain. The left side of the brain is the one that handles language. And language is affected many times in these patients, as Nancy was telling us. Her mom just couldn't communicate. Well, it turns out that the right side of the brain, for people who are not musically experienced, I think, Patrick, you will be using your left side of the brain quite a bit more than your right side of the brain, because you analyze music. You are analyzing music, and the left side of the brain analyzes, decomposes, and puts things together in time, right? But the right side of the brain is the one that brings the emotional components, the emotional aspect of music, the beauty and the rhythm and so on. So I remember, for instance, this patient who came to see me with an acute stroke. This man was in his 50s. He had a blood clot flip from his heart to his brain, and he couldn't speak. He couldn't speak at all. He couldn't even say his name. I remember him trying to say his name. He was completely conscious, completely okay otherwise, but couldn't speak. Well, guess what? We began to sing Happy Birthday to You, and with it, again, came the ability to speak within the context of music. So this is what we saw so beautifully and so clearly in Nancy's work and in Nancy's videos. You are engaging part of the brain that is not being engaged otherwise, and that part of the brain is just making the whole person different. Even language is built into the rhythm of the music. So a wonderful thing that music can do to this in this particular problem.
Well, and we know that the physical act of singing, and the spiritual act of singing, that it can't be seen; it can only be felt. A singer has never seen their voice, except with the help of a doctor, of course. But it's an invisible force, so it must unlock something in the brain that other things can't. I find that just endlessly fascinating and very moving.
Exactly. No, it's you're absolutely right. There is, the brain has many different networks, and some of the networks are not being used because because a part of it is not working because of the disease.
Okay.
Well, the other networks can be activated by music, and then the entire person behaves differently. Even as I said before, the language networks, which seem to be not damaged by the disease. By the way, we can see that very nicely with brain imaging. You probably saw those images with blotches here and there. These are different proteins that build up in the brain, and when they build up on the left side, the person relatively early has difficulty communicating, speaking, right?
Wow.
But music can unlock many of those networks that are silent, are basically not being used, and make the person more communicative. And of course, one of the things that is very important in these diseases is that even though the person looks blah and looks like is not doing anything, their affectivity is there. Their affectivity is the last thing to be lost. And I mean, one can see this, for instance, when a grandmother sees her grandkids come in. I mean, you know, even if she doesn't remember their names or anything like this, but there is that symphony and that wonderful warmth that develops between the person with Alzheimer's and her grandchildren or his grandchildren. So,
well, Doctor, I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions for you in the Q&A today. This is extraordinary, heroic work that you're doing, and we thank you for that. Thank you for joining us, and we will get back to some questions for you, I'm sure. But thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you very much. A pleasure.
Really amazing. I want to welcome my next guest, Eyleen Braaten, who's the Director of Community Engagement for Giving Voices Chorus. Eyleen, welcome. We have a program at HGO also called Giving Voice, and it's a great term. I would love to know how your Giving Voices Chorus came about. Tell us about your work.
Well, first, thank you for having me. It is a pleasure to be involved in a program such as this and to be in the company of such other wonderful people. But I would love to tell you a little bit about Giving Voice. Giving Voice started in 2014. We had two co-founders that had read some research that talked about how, you know, this emerging research was saying music is held in a part of the brain that isn't damaged by Alzheimer's, much like we just heard with the doctor ahead of me that talked about how there's a part of the brain that kind of preserves that. And both had parents that were living with Alzheimer's, and they wanted to do something that brought joy, well-being, purpose to people living with Alzheimer's as well as their care partners. And kind of in that realm, you know, we all know that choral singing, I mean, it reduces depression and stress and anxiety, and you know, it actually reduces social isolation. It gets people into communities, it creates new communities for them. And so they kind of put these two pieces together, and Giving Voice Chorus was born. And after they kind of established some really key components, they wanted to make a program that was for people with Alzheimer's that were still living in community. So the bulk of people that are diagnosed with Alzheimer's are actually still living at home, and they're often really isolated from their community, you know, because the things that they perhaps were doing before, you know, are no longer as available to them. And also, you know, there's an intense social stigma with an Alzheimer's diagnosis. You know, you come into a doctor's room and you receive a diagnosis, and you walk out someone different. People treat you differently. And so they really wanted to incorporate something that was for people that were, you know, struggling to find their fit, and then also that was for the care partners as well. Yeah. So our courses are created for a person living with Alzheimer's and their care partner. Wow. And then also, you know, this idea that empowerment being one of our key areas of focus with people living with Alzheimer's, a public performance is a really important part of our program. So something that allows the singers to really work on something, both for themselves and then collectively in this group. And I can talk a little bit more about that later. But they started with a really small pilot program, just 35 singers and a specially trained music director and accompanist. And that little program has turned into 170 plus singers in the Twin Cities area.
Wow.
We've inspired over 40 choruses across the United States and worldwide.
You and Nancy need to get together and talk. But
yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of opportunity for some synergy there.
Yeah, it's interesting. You bring up the social isolation and the stigma, which is not something I think many people think about. You know, Nancy even mentioned that her own family kept her mother's diagnosis from her, you know, from their children. I mean, I think that's a fascinating part of this work. That's really wonderful to hear about the origins of that. Would you share an example of the kind of work you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So our choruses meet weekly. Now, obviously, with the pandemic, you know, we are meeting virtually. But
you have been able to meet virtually, though.
We have. You know, I do not think we even missed a week, to be honest. We took the opportunity to say, you know, we want to keep these people together because it's really clear that for many, it's the best part of their week. You know, one of our singers, he's said a quote that I use all the time now, where he said that, you know, living with Alzheimer's disease, I'm always told what I can't do. And this is my time in the week where I focus on what I can do. You know, I can still sing. And so we wanted to make sure that we didn't miss a beat, and we kept singers connected during the pandemic. So we have been singing over Zoom, which is clearly a very challenging thing. I don't know if singing is the right word, but we've been singing together over Zoom. And in the time of pandemic, we have put together many virtual programs that we really hope are increasing Alzheimer's awareness and sharing the story of, you know, how to bring joy, empowerment, and really well-being. So we're focused on, you know, the well-being component of living with Alzheimer's to all communities, and we're hoping to continue to inspire people to create these choruses that can really work on, you know, the idea that there is still so much that we can celebrate with people living with Alzheimer's disease as well as their care partners, and that it's something that the more we do it and the more we work on reducing that stigma and creating awareness, you know, the better we're all going to be.
Amazing. And you're based out of you said the Twin Cities. You're in Minneapolis, St. Paul?
Yep, Minneapolis, Minnesota.
That's great. Well, what is this video clip that we're going to see?
So this video clip is from our most recent virtual concert.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time working on how to empower our singers to record their music themselves, or record themselves singing. And I just have to say, it was just another example of how we're continually impressed at how our singers, they rise to the occasion. And so they took something that, singing on Zoom was not familiar to them at the beginning. And, you know, now they talk about how they Zoom with their friends, they Zoom with their family, but then taking something where they had to record themselves singing and then also record a video. Many will say it was challenging at first, but we did it. You know, they, like I said, they continually impress us. So this particular clip talks about one of our singers took a trip canoeing, and one of the songs kind of reminded of us. You'll see a little bit of stories about who our singers are, and, you know, kind of what the heart of our chorus is. It's about community, and then you'll get to hear a performance from our virtual chorus.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Hello, I'm Daryl, and I have been diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment. Music has always been a part of my life, whether singing in school choruses, church choirs, and now the Giving Voice Chorus. I also love being out in nature, and a favorite time is canoeing in the wilderness. These pictures are from a trip on the Upper Missouri River from Fort Benton, Montana to the James Kitt Recreation Area just a few weeks ago. It's really great when nature and music glide along together, as they do in the famous ballad, Shenandoah.
Shenandoah, I long to hear you.
music has always been a big part, and we met in a choral group, and well, we've been making music together ever since. So this is one of I'd like to sing for you one of the songs that we used to sing on car trips, and this is just one of them that we always sang in the car. Because God made the stars to shine. Because God made the ivy twine. Because God made the sky so blue. Then I will tell you just why I love you.
Wow. What extraordinary work, Eyleen. Important, extraordinary work. What's the future of the Giving Voices chorus?
Well, we continue to, really forge ahead with this worldwide movement. So, inspiring more choruses, working to continue to develop ways in which we can make our choruses more accessible to all communities, whether it's working with diverse communities in our Twin Cities area or reaching out to other parts of the country where we're establishing new partnerships. But there are so many fingers in which, from this panel itself, it shows you how music and the brain is a really special relationship, and Giving Voice wants to continue to harness that in lots of different ways. So we continue to be a voice for, bringing joy and well-being to people living with Alzheimer's, and to keeping people connected to song, to each other, and again, just continuing this worldwide movement.
I noticed with Nancy's work, with your work, and I'm linking to something Renee Fleming said in our last program, there are all kinds of musical careers also emerging in the world of music therapy, and in the worlds we're talking about today. There's a lot of musical careers that are not center stage at Carnegie Hall, and this is a really important emerging field for music therapists, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have created a toolkit that combines some of the resources and information needed to start this work. And we also have a national learning community where people come together and say, okay, well, this is something that I'm passionate about. And how do I either, launch something in my area, or how do I tie this to the work that I'm doing? Or how do I just learn more about how to, create something special with music and people living with Alzheimer's? So we're really hoping to be a convener for all of those people to connect, this idea to live better with Alzheimer's through song.
Well, and it's important in the professional community also that we constantly make young artists aware of the options available to them in working in music therapy and doing this kind of extraordinarily important work. Thank you so much, Eyleen. I'm so moved by what you showed us of the Giving Voices chorus. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Our final panelist is a documentarian from Canada, Isabelle Raynauld, who created Tuning the Brain with Music. Before we speak with Isabelle, let's take a little sneak peek at her film.
The brain is a complicated place. It's a small place, but it's a complicated place. It's only this big, right? So it's only...
The theory in neurology was that when somebody's brain was damaged, it was damaged.
Le cerveau emmagasine toute l'expérience qu'il vit. Donc, si un bébé vit que de la douleur, ben son cerveau va se former en douleur.
If you look at the brain when you're active in music, you're using almost the entire brain.
C'est très très récent qu'on a montré qu'effectivement le bébé se souvient de la musique qu'on lui a présentée quand il était dans le ventre de la mère. Avant, on pensait qu'on délirait là.
Who the hell knows what is actually living in your head?
Une jeune m'a dit une fois, sans la musique, je ne serais plus là. La musique m'a sauvé la vie.
Surtout quand je jamme avec du monde, il y a comme une interaction entre nous autres, puis quelque chose qui se crée. Dans ce moment-là, il y a genre un sentiment d'apaisement vraiment fort. C'est comme tout le reste est pas important.
Chemically, something is happening. You know what I mean? Like something is shifting. And it could even be the harmonics of the chord, the music itself. It might align, you know, your brain.
Quand je pense que les flèches vont se toucher, je joue sur la guitare. Et quand ma tête commence à aller à gauche ou à droite, je tombe sur la guitare. Puis si ça marche pas, j'appelle des gars comme lui.
Ça va? Guitar?
Doing good.
All right.
Inspired you to create this extraordinary film? I'm so moved I can hardly speak. Can we have Isabelle's sound on? Isabelle, you need to unmute, I think.
Yes, well, I'm still moved by that film, and even watching this clip again, although I lived with the footage for over a year in the editing room, it still gets to me every single time. I met amazing people. I did research for over, 5 years in neurosciences before I went out to film. And then it took another 5 years to go film all these different stories and the neuroscientists and different parts of the world, and it was really wonderful. I really wanted to bridge science with real life stories, because often scientists, with all my respect to them, work in silos. So one of my goals was really to bridge what the scientists are doing in their labs in terms of research on the brain and how music affects our brain, and real life stories, such as, vets being, really saved by their guitars, not taking their own lives.
How did you find this material, or did it find you? How did you make this film?
That's an excellent question. Well, first of all, this film is an homage to my parents, but also to my aunts, uncles, cousins, who were all born deaf on my father's side.
Wow.
So I grew up, my father's and my sibling and my brothers and sisters, we were the only ones born hearing in a family of 9. So from a very young age, at around age of 4, I realized that my greater family was deaf, because I saw these boots, for Christmas Eve, and I said, "Where is everybody?" My mom said, "They're upstairs," but they're deaf, so we don't hear them a lot because they're sign language, they're using sign language. So I realized very young how much a privilege it is to be hearing, to be able to learn an instrument, to hear music, to dance on music. So that was really my first motivation. My parents met in a choir too, so they chose each other through their voices, basically.
Common theme today, yes, yeah.
Excuse me?
A common theme today was in the...
Yes, very true.
Eyleen's film.
And so that was the motivation. And when you say if the subject found me, well, it was really my desire to learn, and my desire to understand how the brain works, and not only the auditory cortex, but why are certain people born, not hearing, and then how does the brain process music. And because I'm an academic myself in cinema, I like to learn, so I went to all these conferences in musical neurosciences, met amazing researchers that, from one researcher to the next, they would say, "Oh, you should speak to Dr. Popol, you should speak to Isabelle Perez at Braaten in Montreal, you should speak to Connie Tamaino." And so it was an amazing journey. And then with regards with finding participants and the stories, well, I had a wonderful researcher, Terry Foxman, who's a documentary researcher who would, we'd sit and I'd explain to her what I was looking for, and then she'd say, well, there's this person who had this experience, that person, and yeah, it's been amazing.
Extraordinary work. Are there things that you heard today
Yes.
from Nancy or the doctor or from Eyleen
Yes.
that particularly resonated with you based on the film you made?
Absolutely, and listening to them, and I watched their videos that you sent a few days ago. I wish I would have known them while I was filming, because for sure they would have, their work and what they discovered, on the ground with real people, would have made it, most probably in the film, because once again, I was looking for tangible proof. Not that I disrespect scientific experiments, but I wanted to find people who could say, music has transformed me. I've experienced it live. And where it happened to me to see it live the most immediate effect of music on somebody's state of mind or behavior is with premature babies.
Uh-huh.
So, the music therapist had only like 20 minutes with a baby. I mean, I couldn't be filming this today with the pandemic. And, she'd come in and the baby was agitated. Some of these babies are in great suffering. One of the babies I filmed had no esophagus, so he was going through a lot of pain. And honestly, I seen it. This is not me making this up. I mean, the baby's agitated, and at the end he fell asleep, just with the music, this music therapist, amazing voice, the instruments, and engaging the baby. I also saw it with the vets, the Canadian vets, where when I started filming, one of the men who's in the film, Jean, was very agitated. And I said, look, just stay focused on Ryan, who's playing the guitar with you.
Yeah.
And I saw his whole body transform. So the immediacy with which music affects us is, well, I mean, you're in this, luckily for you, every day. So it affects your brain in an immediate way, like Dr. Masdeu was speaking about networks. Well, the networks can regenerate. And what I've learned is that the right brain, if it's injured, well, the left brain will come in to help it. So I have a researcher who explains that, we have two hemispheres probably to help each other. So that's another thing I discovered, which is really encouraging.
Well, music has one of the advantages of the arts because it's both a science and an art.
Yes.
And our job as professional musicians, of course, is to get the science right so that everyone else can experience the art of music. And we, as musicians, we get to experience both the art and the science. But that's what makes it, I think, such a potent spiritual act for artists. But what is astounding to me, and what I'm hearing today so much, is the effect of music beyond its artistic component and beyond its science. There's something ineffable there that is incredibly important.
Absolutely. Sorry to interrupt.
No.
Therapeutically, music has no side effect. It's free. You can try. Like one of the vets said he was going to take his own life, coming back from Bosnia, and his wife at some point just pulled out his guitar from his teenage years and said, do something, And he said that he started playing the guitar, and within 15 minutes, his dark thoughts had kind of, vanished. Well, spontaneously they would come back. But music has that power to transform your mood. And I think it also, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a neuroscientist, I'm just a filmmaker. However, what I understood from the research I did is that it kind of bypasses your rationality. It bypasses language too. So vets don't want to explain in words what they've experienced.
No.
However, through playing the guitar, singing, they can express things. Same thing with the homeless youth that I filmed, where they can't put words on the trauma they've been through. However, through the drum circle and with the music therapist's help, they can express very intense emotions such as anger, sadness, that really bypass speech therapy, I think.
Really amazing, Isabelle. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm delighted that we're able to share this film for a 3-day limited viewing. You can register at the Eventbrite link in the chat to watch the film. I highly recommend it. I watched it the other day. It's astounding.
Oh, thank you so much. I hope. Thank you for this great invitation. I'm really grateful to be here.
Well, I'm thrilled to all my guests. I'm going to have to turn this over to Carleen for the Q&A. I have to go to a 2:00 appointment. But I'm so honored to be with all of you today. All of my guests, thank you so much. And for our viewing guests, it was a real pleasure to be with you today for very, very important discussion about music. So thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you. And welcome back, everyone. We'll allow our other guests to come back. What a really rich program. While we're waiting on, one of the benefits of moderating a Q&A is that you get to ask the questions that I want to ask first while we're waiting on some questions from the audience. I'm curious though, with such an interesting, because a lot of times too, it was important for us to have Dr. Masdeu here and to have that medical background, but also as, you think, sometimes we get the question, why is HGO doing this? And we can see that there is such a creative component to healing and care in this field. So I'm curious, Dr. Masdeu, was there something particularly that from one of our guests that particularly resonated with you after hearing such wonderful examples of how music and art can be really utilized in the care and in memory care?
Well, it is impossible to choose one because all the presentations were amazing, truly, truly amazing. It's just, Nancy's presentation and discussion of what went on in her family was so real and so touching and so important because a lot of people are being helped. And, I must say the same about the other two presentations. They are incredible means to make the life of people with memory diseases and their families much better. In many cases, I deal with these progressive diseases of the brain of later age, but Isabelle told us for people who have a number of other brain difficulties, including children with different brain damages and so on, music can be a tremendous force for recovery and for rehabilitation. We don't like that word anymore, but to make their lives and their future much better. And the brain is a very, I think the other concept that was brought up by Isabelle that is very, very important is that, the brain is not a fixed, rigid set of connections that we have. It's very plastic. It's very, even in people whose brain has been damaged, there is a tremendous amount of ability to remodel the brain, and music can play a critical role there. So absolutely. I enjoyed each one of the presentations. All of them were amazing, and I'm taking ideas for our center and for the families and the patients to make use of your wonderful resources. And I hope that not only in the the twin cities, but not only Minneapolis, St. Paul, but also in Houston, which is a little bit big also. We have the opportunity of having this wonderful resource that you created. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And actually, Eyleen and Nancy, and Eyleen in particular, Nancy in particular, as an opera singer, right? I'm curious, how do we open up and how do we introduce this type of work that artists can become involved in? Certainly, we have to be mindful that musicians are not therapists. They're not music therapists, and there is very special training for that, and we want to be very respectful for that. But how can, in your mind, artists be informed about these wonderful opportunities earlier in their career so that it can be blended into what they're already doing as artists? Because, Nancy, this work has to inform you as an artist, I would think.
I say that when I did a session, I've helped with sessions, leading the sing-along. And I always, because of my personal experience with my mom, I always, I'm the first one to cry. And that's why the person who runs is like, you can't lead a session, get out of here, because I get so emotionally involved. But when I do a session, I say that is more, it touches my heart and my soul more than any, and I sang at every major opera house around the world, right, with all the major conductors. It is much more rewarding than any performance I've done anywhere. But we have, before COVID hit, we were in 3 or 4 communities and memory care centers in Houston. Patrick helped us.
Thank you.
Exactly. Patrick helped us find singers. We've gone through the opera companies. We're partnering with Opera Saratoga this summer. They're hiring 2 singers full year. But I think I made a presentation to Opera America, and they're partnering with us to get the message out to the opera companies, because what we have a problem doing is finding the singers. I say to be a singer for songs by heart, you have to have a beautiful voice, because otherwise people like my mom are going to tell you you're not very good. You have to have a beautiful voice. You have to have a wonderful smile and a huge heart. We train them. We have 1 music therapist. We're very careful not to say that we're not doing music therapy. We're using music in a therapeutic way, because there aren't enough music therapists in the United States to get to all the communities. Because my goal is that I want people singing 5 days a week. Now, and that's why I love hearing about the chorus, because if my mom, if we could have, when she was living at home, had her be a member of chorus, I know she would have loved that. So we're in the memory care communities, and it's so easy for the opera singers, right? So we started with Northwestern. I've started with the students there, piloting the project to see, okay, can we have college students who are considering careers in voice assist in the sessions? We don't let them lead the session, because you really have to have the maturity, because there are people, as you will know, Doctor, there are people who want to hit. You have to be able to. We had a woman who, as the singer was singing, take off her clothes, right? Not the singer. One of the people with dementia started taking off her clothes. And you have to know how to have the maturity and the experience to be able to deal with the situations. But the opera companies have people in their choruses who live there year round. We're not looking for the major stars who are going to go from city to city. We want people who live in the community. And so the opera companies have hundreds of those singers, as you know. Mm-hmm. And so I always thought that the opera companies around the United States, around the world, could help find the singers who would be interested in this kind of work, and the pianists, because we find that it's key to have a pianist and a singer, because our singers, as you look at the video, we find it's important to touch the people, hold their hand. We have people who can't walk anymore. They're in wheelchairs, and they get up to dance with us, and we're like, get that person down. They don't walk anymore. They've forgotten that they don't walk anymore, and they get up to dance. But as you know, Doctor, the people with dementia often don't get touched. They get dressed in the morning, but they don't have somebody hugging them. They don't get that. normal touching that we get during the day that's so important. So our singers are taught to kneel on the floor, get the eye contact with the person, and hold their hands. And so it's not just the singing. The singing allows us to incorporate a lot. But you are right, Charlie. It's so easy. There are so many thousands of singers out there who could be doing this work.
Well, and HGOco, I mean, many opera companies do hire teaching artists. I mean, HGOco, we hire teaching artists. We have fantastic teaching artists. We work with the Center for Performing Arts Medicine at Houston Methodist. We have worked a year ago with Sheltering Arms, who works with memory care, people who live with memory challenges. And so I think there are a lot of opportunities that I think as a former college professor, I think sometimes we stigmatize, we look on, the people who go on and sing on the main stages, that's our ultimate goal. But I think our lives would be richer and fuller, and we would have more to say as artists if we were all doing this kind of work. So we do have a question. Here's a question. Can you share what you have learned about music and TBI that mimics dementia in elderly individuals? This might be a question for Dr. Masdeu. Can you share what you've learned about music and TBI?
Sure. Yeah, I heard that. Traumatic brain injury can happen at any age. I suppose the person who's asking is thinking about someone who had a traumatic brain injury in the past and now is older and is having some difficulties with memory. That is one scenario. The person with traumatic brain injury may have some areas of the brain particularly damaged by the accident, whatever it was, motor vehicle, whatnot. And as we heard before, and has been illustrated so well by the other speakers, there are parts of the brain that are still working well. It is interesting how our hearing reaches the brain in a part of the brain that is very well protected from traumatic brain injury. I won't, I don't have a blackboard behind me, and I cannot tell you this in a more clear graphical way, but it's very well protected, and therefore very, very seldom that part of the brain is damaged in traumatic brain injury. So one can use this fact to access the brain networks that are intact and make them active through music. So yes, music plays and can play a very important role in the rehabilitation of people with traumatic brain injury, even when they are older. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. And Isabelle, I wanted to ask you, from this film, what comes next? Are you thinking about a related project, or was this one time project, or is there another idea that you are looking to amplify through film that's related?
Well, thank you. I have to say, this is my second film about the brain. I directed another one before this with the National Film Board of Canada, which is called The Mystical Brain, where I looked at, I had asked a very small question, which was, do we have a soul? And if we do, does it show up in the brain? So I did, once again, years of research.
Thank you.
So I have a hard time giving up on the brain. And because I've made 2 films about the brain, I have a lot of people coming to me asking me to continue. Right now, I'm taking a kind of a step back because it's a big endeavor. Right? It's like having many kids all born the same day. So I'm still kind of feeding them all. I need to put my own brain on pause to let the ideas come. And right now, the film was finished right before the pandemic. So I'm going to spend this year, living with this film and presenting it, doing Q&As and things like that. And after that, usually ideas come to me kind of spontaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Or with meeting people where suddenly I get the spark and I'm like, okay, I have something here, I want to go there. So I know I will have a lot of pressure to continue making another film about the brain, which I'm totally interested in, because I had to cut out so much good material to make a 78-minute version.
A lot ends up on the floor, or ends up now. It's digital, but yeah, it does.
We call it, the expression is, the footage ending up on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
One option is I might make another edit of all of the other stories I had that didn't make it into this version. But I'm totally open. This my brain is wide open.
Great, awesome.
Yeah.
And Isabelle, I'm curious as to your thoughts going back even to, what are the best ways to entice musicians and caregivers and whatnot to participate in these types of activities?
Well, I think it has to start, in daycare, all the way to homes, care homes like Nancy and Eyleen were talking about. And I think it's just to have the reflex to say we can bring music to these babies, to these young children. My daughter went to a school where music, in primary school, where music was taught 2-3 times a week. I think it's just a question of having the public realize how music is accessible and good for you, And the other thing I learned is that we each have different musical types that will calm us down or make us anxious. So that's very interesting too. That's the music therapist who explained this to me. I have a colleague who calms down with heavy metal, So it's not only Mozart that calms people.
Right, exactly.
So I think it's really a question of reminding the public that just picking up a guitar or joining a choir or having a pianist come to your care home can really transform the person's life. And just on an ending note, my father had Alzheimer's, and to his last breath, we played him his favorite songs, and he was reacting. He would just kind of become alive, and it was very, just like what Nancy was describing. It reminded me of how much my father was, as you said, Nancy, didn't recognize us at all, but we played all his favorite songs, and till his last breath, he was still shaking. So he was shaking with emotion. It was
great. Thank you. And Eyleen, any final thoughts after such a rich conversation?
I think I'm just continually inspired by this community of people. The more stories I hear about the wonderful work that's going on, and the more validation you feel for this type of work, it's very inspiring, and I think very timely. We're at a time where people need to recognize what brings them joy and what support they can have. And when music is a part of your life, at whatever stage you are or whatever challenges you're focusing, it improves it. And so I just think it's really inspiring to hear all these stories.
Thank you.
If I could make a quick comment on Eileen's approach, I love it because you are taking people with mild cognitive impairment and making them active. I mean, they are the ones who are singing, and it is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Oh, thank you. It is really, it's inspiring. All of your work is so inspiring, and we're so honored that you would all take the time to spend with us so that we can share this hopefully to even more people. So thank you all.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
and we look forward to watching your continued work. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And everyone, remember to register for the Eventbrite link for a free limited time screening of the film Tuning the Brain with Music. Upcoming, our next episode of Music and Healing will be streamed on February 2nd at 1 p.m. And we will be discussing loneliness and music's role in that. We will also be bringing back HGOco's award-winning Star-Crossed web series in late February. So please look for that. Along with, HGOco partners with the Institute for Spirituality and Health on their Regulare series, exploring the role of music and faith in spiritual practices. And be sure to like this and share this video. And follow us on Facebook and YouTube for up-to-date event details. For more information about upcoming digital programming through the Sarah and Ernst Butler digital series, or about the array of programs offered by HGOco, visit hgo.org. Hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.